Okay, thank you very much. Well, good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Vale of Whitehorse Oxfordshire District Council's Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Max Thompson and I'll be chairing this meeting. This meeting is being held at our office in Abbey House, Abingdon. Voting members are here in person as required, but officers and public speakers are able to join remotely if they wish through Microsoft Teams. This meeting is also being streamed live and recorded on the Council's YouTube channel for public viewing. I have three procedural matters. So firstly, for those of you joining remotely, when you're not speaking, please ensure your microphone is muted and your camera is off. Public speakers must only have their cameras on and be unmuted when addressing the committee or answering questions of clarification in their designated slots. Number two, if councillors wish to ask a question or participate in the debate, please raise your hand and I'll call on you in turn. And finally, as a modern council, both officers and members will be using their electronic devices throughout the meeting. I have four housekeeping announcements. The first one is evacuation procedure. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate the building by the nearest exit, which is immediately to your right as you leave the room. And please then go stand at assembly point 9 in the outside area beyond the fire exit. The Democratic Services officers will assist you. On arriving at the meeting, you should have read the emergency evacuation procedure and signed the fire register, so please inform Democratic Services if you have not done so. Number two, please mobile phones, please on silent or mute. Number three, members of the public and the officers who wish to leave the meeting after the application that they're concerned with has been debated, you're very welcome to do so. You can leave just via the front door of reception, but please do so quietly without engaging with members of the committee. And number four, when the meeting has ended, I'll ask for confirmation the live stream has ended. At that point, please leave the virtual meeting if you're joining remotely, or make your way out of the building, remembering to sign out as you leave. And just a final point for all of us, this is a meeting in public, not a public meeting. And I ask that members of the public, both those attending in person and those virtually, ensure that they do not shout out or disrupt the committee's deliberation outside of those who've registered to speak in their allocated slots. Great, that's all the formality done. So, apologies for absence. Lucy, do we have any apologies this evening?
Yes, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Ron Batstone, who has sent Representative Diana Gover as the substitute. Apologies from Councillor Jenny Hannaby and Amos Devine is substituting for her. And we also have Councillor Sarah James attending as a substitute member for the vacancy on the committee. Okay, well, thank you all for agreeing to sub in. That's very kind of you. I now turn to the minutes of the Planning Committee meeting on the 21st of January 2026. Has anyone got any comments, or would someone like to propose we adopt those as an accurate record? Councillor Horton. I have to propose we adopt them. Perfect. Do we have a second of that? Councillor James, thank you so much. So, all those in favour of adopting those? Those against? Any abstentions? Very good. I will sign those at the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Chair, I'm staying for me to say it that I lost.
Understood. Thank you so much. So number four is declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest on the items we're discussing this evening? I don't see any. I haven't been pre-warned of any, so that's good. Next item is urgent business. Emily, do we have any urgent business this evening?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, perfect. And then finally, we have public participation. There are two applications we're considering tonight, and then a further item on appeals information. And I confirm that we have a number of registered speakers on both of these applications, and I will guide those speakers as we get to their turn to speak. And with that, I turn to agenda item 7, which is Partridge Close, Sutton Courtney. And Amanda, I believe you're presenting on this one.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Right, thank you, Chair. This is a retrospective planning application which seeks to vary the requirements of conditions 4, which relates to landscape, and condition 7 relating to sustainable drainage scheme of P14 V2362/4. In advance of this meeting, a planning committee site visit was undertaken yesterday. Development comprises 28 dwellings completed in 2019 and all fully occupied. It was originally intended that the access road from Milton Road and all internal roads and driveways would be block paved. However, when the development was completed, some of the roads and all of the parking spaces on and off plot have been surfaced with tarmac instead. Concern has been expressed by local residents that the alternative road surfacing has caused drainage issues and questioning the measures that have been implemented. A number of other concerns have been raised regarding elements of the scheme that haven't been implemented in accordance with the approved plans. Whilst drainage details were previously approved under condition 7, this application proposes additional measures in the form of gullies to be constructed to allow rainfall to pass over the surface of the road, through the gullies and into permavoid units, where rainwater is dispersed into the infiltration trench where it soaks into the ground. My colleague Will Petrowski will explain this further in further detail shortly as the Council's drainage engineer. Condition 4 relates to the landscaping of the site, and whilst details were approved in 2015, it's apparent that some of this landscaping has not fully been implemented. For example, a wildflower meadow. I can show you one of the show how clear these are coming out. This is the landscaping. Got them. Oh, I can't, sorry, not very good at that. Yes, this is the landscaping plan. So, for example, some of the wildflower meadow, hedge and tree planting around the public open space and tree planting to the rear of the site haven't been implemented. The application seeks to take an opportunity to review the landscaping on the site and ensure that it's implemented in accordance with the approved plans. Conditions 4 and 7 are connected, which is why they're both covered in this application. For example, one of the drainage features is the shallow swale that runs between Road 3 and Road 1 for extreme rainfall events. On the approved landscaping plan, this is proposed to be seeded with a wet wildflower mix. No technical objections have been raised to the application, and in terms of harm, the existing tarmac surfacing is causing pooling of water during heavy rainfall events, and this application seeks to incorporate additional measures to address this and facilitate the movement of rainwater to the infiltration trench below. Further conditions will enable the Council to monitor the situation and give assurance regarding the measures implemented. A number of other issues have been raised in this application and through enforcement investigations. Some of these fall outside of planning and will need to be pursued down appropriate channels, such as the National House Builders. As the report sets out, non-material amendments have been submitted to regularise some of the changes that have been made. With regard to enforcement, this is still a live case, and in accordance with National Planning Policy Guidance, Section 73 to regularise the development and address outstanding issues is the appropriate mechanism in this instance. A number of concerns have been raised by local residents, and one I would like to address is that the claim that the application is not lawful. Officers have sought legal advice on the challenges raised, and it has been confirmed that in principle the Council has the power to grant retrospective planning permission under Section 73 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 for the development that has been carried out, incorporating standard conditions in place of pre-commencement and pre-occupation condition. Concern has also been expressed regarding the red line that shows the application boundary and why this covers the whole of the development when the remedial measures only cover certain areas and don't cover private parking spaces or garden soakaways, for example. The red line plan has been submitted and shown in the appendices as the same plan that was submitted in the original permission. We often have Section 73 applications that just focus on drainage or landscaping in a certain area, but the red line area still covers the whole site. Section 73 allows for changes to a planning permission condition, but it generally does not permit fundamental alterations to the red line boundary of a development site. And while Section 73 can be used to amend conditions related to the development, typically does not allow for changes that would fundamentally alter the extent or boundary of the development. It is accepted that the surfacing isn't what was approved. However, the application does not propose to dig the road up and start again with the approved block paving. Instead, it seeks to regularise the tarmac surfacing that has been installed on site and incorporate remedial measures to address the surface water flooding issues. We are assessing whether the remedial measures proposed in the form of gullies is an acceptable solution to the problems currently experienced. Given the fact that the drainage officers are satisfied with the measures proposed, it is considered that this application offers the least disruptive option for residents, and officers are confident that the measures will address the existing issues. Additional conditions have been are recommended to provide assurance. It's also important to point out that by granting planning permission, this would facilitate the resolution of the pooling issues through the addition of gullies, ensure that the missing landscaping is implemented within an appropriate timescale and agreed schedule, and it would also enable the applicant to enter into a private streets agreement with Oxfordshire County Council, whereby they would assess whether the roads have been constructed to an adoptable standard and give residents some assurance. It's all understood that this can only proceed with permission. The original permission was subject to a Section 106 legal agreement which secured affordable housing, contributions towards local sports facilities and open space. Whilst the financial obligations have all been paid and affordable housing transferred to the registered provider, it's considered appropriate to amend the recommendation to authorise the head of planning, in consultation with the chair of planning committee, to approve planning permissions subject to completion of a deed of variation to the agreed Section 106 agreement attached to P14 V2362 full and the planning conditions listed. For these reasons, it's therefore recommended that the application is approved subject to conditions, and I will now hand you over to Will to explain the drainage arrangements in further detail. My colleagues Will and Emma Turner, who's the enforcement team leader, are here to answer specific questions during debate regarding drainage and enforcement matters respectively.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, so I'm going to briefly talk about kind of the drainage scheme that was initially submitted and approved, the deviations from this during construction, and the remedial works that this application proposes in order to remedy the surface water pooling we're seeing on the road surface. So this sketch kind of shows the principle of the submitted drainage scheme when the condition was first discharged. So it's a permeable block pave system whereby rainfall falling directly on the surface would pass between blocks, through the road construction layers beneath, and then into an infiltration trench beneath the road where water would then soak away into the natural soils. So when designing pervious pavements, there's four main points to consider: the rate of infiltration through the pavement surface, the storage volume required for a design storm event, the outfall capacity, in this instance, the infiltration rate of the surrounding soils, and exceedance design. It's important to note that the infiltration capacity, the surface infiltration capacity, has no relationship with the infiltration capacity of the soils below. These are both independent to each other and both need to be assessed during design. Surface infiltration rates, so the rate at which water would pass through over the blocks or tarmac, should be significantly greater than design rainfall intensity. The minimum considered value is about 2,500 millimeters per hour, and this allows the reduced performance of the material over its lifespan. So as the blocks were replaced with tarmac, what's being seen on site is, in heavy rainfall, water is ponded on the surface and it's not able to infiltrate to the trench below. The developer carried out some core samples at 3 locations along this road, and the results were: in location 1, the surface had a infiltration rate of around 1,700 mil per hour, and the binder around 360 mil per hour. Location 2, the surface was 5,000 mil per hour and the binder 60 mil per hour. And location 3, the surface was about 3,800 mil per hour, but the binder only 120 mil per hour. In road construction, the binder is kind of the layer of the tarmac that provides your strength and durability. The surface is your kind of aseptic, so smooth. They both need to be tested as part of the tarmac. So what can be seen in the 3 core samples, at least one element of this road construction has failed and doesn't have the required permeability to transfer water from the surface to the infiltration trench beneath. In order to overcome this, what's being proposed as part of this application is rainfall falling on the surface, it gets trapped. It would then transfer to a series of gullies, where this would then flow to what's called a permavoid unit, which is basically attached to the end of the pipe, and this disperses the rainwater into the infiltration trench. That rainwater will then soak to the soils as before. So in essence, the only thing that's changing in this application is how rainfall is being transferred from the surface to the infiltration trench beneath. The infiltration trench isn't being amended, and it remains as per the existing consent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anything final you wish to say, or shall we move on to our registered speakers? Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much. We will probably return to you. I'm sure we'll return to you for some questions once we've heard from our registered speakers this evening. So we have 3 registered speakers on this application. First is Paul Gallagher, a representative of Sutton Courtenay Parish Council. So Mr. Gallagher, thank you for joining us. Or is it Councillor Gallagher? Apologies. What would you prefer?
Councillor,
Councillor, excellent. Councillor Gallagher, thank you for joining us.
good evening, everyone.
Excellent. Good evening. Well, I hope I've explained to you, you'll have 3 minutes when you're ready, and you'll get a 30-second warning. So please, whenever you're ready, we'll start.
Okay. Right. I'll start then. This planning application does not address all of the non-compliance issues. To try and summarise most, if not all, of the issues, starting with design fundamentals, the roads, pavements and parking spaces are too narrow. A refuse vehicle cannot turn on the northern end of the north-south access road. The fire appliance hose cannot reach plot 15, which is right at the far end. The north-west corner, I think. As you know, everything was originally to be block paved, now part termite. This is a subject of some regret. But block paving should be 80, not 60 millimetre thick, as they have been made. And this is to cope with loadings of heavy traffic, refuse, etc. And they had an incomplete makeup. The construction was not Oxford County Council inspected, as I gather is required. Dealing to a particular area, damp-proof courses to plots 60 to 80 are less than 150 millimetres above ground level, with rising damp occurring. The houses, put simply, the houses are too low in the ground. As you see from the photos, I think the central of the space is just grass, supposedly a grass meadow of trees. The trees died, and now grass only. To talk about sustainable drainage as best I can, none of the storm water drainage was inspected or tested. There is ponding to undulating hard surfaces, particularly the main access road, and impermeable macadam to parking discharges level to the roads, rather than going through block paving, directly down through block paving, such that there is ponding at the interface with the road surfaces, the access road surfaces. There's no exceedant swell or link drain, as I think has been mentioned. And I'm not a drainage expert, but there are no rotting eyes or catch pits to permavoids proposed. And bearing in mind that they will be sealed in macadam,
30 seconds left.
Will be difficult. The road floods outside plot 18, in the area where the houses are too low in the ground. The gully in standing water, when I visited, Diamond Rod did not find a permavoid. The drain ends in clay. Parking area to plot 19 floods. Then finally, garden soakaways are too small, some are too close to houses to comply with building regulation requirements.
Councillor Gallagher, we've come to 3 minutes, so have you got any final summing up points?
Really? Yeah, I think the drainage was not inspected. The sewage pump is too close to houses. It should be in the compound. And the pump is unadoptable not NHBC or Thames Water improved. So in other words, there's a non-adoption issue again.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Gulliver. There may be some questions of clarification for you from the committee, so I'll just wait to see if anyone has any questions. Councillor Madison.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned at the end there about Dynarod not finding a void and only finding clay. I was just hoping you could expand on that a little bit and tell us a little bit more about that.
That's all I know of it.
Right, okay. So I presume it was just one spot they were doing, was it? Or
In response to a problem, yeah, they were building.
yeah, okay.
Any further questions of clarification?
Is that something I can add to that? Or?
So it is, you're a registered speaker in your own slot. So if you wish to come up, then maybe the committee might ask the same question. But I'm afraid, please, I just ask that we just engage with the speaker here at the moment. Councillor Pickles.
Thank you, Chair. So just thinking to what's the scope of this particular application? Is your main concern the technical performance of the drainage system, or that condition 7, as it stands in the documentation, may regularise drainage features across the wider site beyond the roads?
I think that the issue is potentially wholesale, as recent weather has demonstrated. And the other principal issue I feel quite strongly is that too much is not suitable for adoption, so it makes the householders liable in perpetuity.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? I can't see this, so thank you very much for your time and your statement this evening. And I now call upon our next speaker. Now, we actually have 2 speakers registered with Peter Horrocks and Dr. Tawa. My understanding is that Peter Horrocks will be speaking, but if Dr. Tawa, you might wish to respond to any questions for the committee, I might suggest that you also go and sit up there as well, if you would like to engage. Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening. As I think it's been explained, you have 3 minutes to share between you. My understanding is that Mr. Peter Horrocks, you will be taking that 3 minutes. Before we start the time, I might just ask though, could you just briefly just introduce yourself and just let me know of which property you reside, so I can get a sense of where you are on the site. That's okay.
Okay, so I'm Peter Horrocks. I reside at number 1 Rye Gardens, which is plot 28 on the plans. So that's at the entrance of the development at the end of Access Road. Well,
Thank you.
Halfway down Access Road. And the termination of the mechanic part.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Tawa.
So that's my house, which I think council was referring to, where there's a dam rising. Then the water pooling happens. So it's plot number 18, which is besides the 2 sovereign houses.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much. Well, as I say, you have 3 minutes and we'll start when you start. So please, thank you for joining us.
Chair, members, thank you. Please do have regard to the written representations that have already been submitted. They contain detail and evidence I cannot cover in 3 minutes. This development was built some years ago, but there are multiple breaches of planning conditions. The previous constructive application for the same as-built scheme was refused in 2018 because it was not acceptable, plans did not match, and there were issues, conflicts with core local plan policies. This application is presented as fixing the roads first, but what you approve is defined by the conditions in the documents that they lock in. The proposed condition 7 would tie in the entire red line to a suite of drainage documents. Please do not treat this application as roads only unless officers define clearly what is and is not being regularised by the application. The clearest lock-in example is unapproved garden soakways shown and relied upon within that package. Residents are concerned that there is no site-wide verified baseline and no clear in-situ infiltration testing where infiltration is relied upon. There are proximity concerns. For example, at the Red Kite Close boundary, 2 soakways are located within 5 metres of a single property. I'm not asking you to decide engineering details tonight. I'm asking you to avoid inadvertently regularising unverified, unapproved drainage elements simply because they are embedded in the Condition 7 plan package and fall within the red line. This links to the wider evidential issues. The as-built survey is partial. Roughly a third of the site contains errors. For instance, it shows that only 3 properties connect foul drainage into the main sewer. That's clearly wrong, and it reflects misidentification of inlets and assumptions about whether laterals are shared, but it also shows that the survey is not to the standard needed for verification of a retrospective scheme. As another example, the developer states that gullies were installed during construction of Road 1, but residents have provided photos indicating or showing that gullies do not exist. The point isn't to argue each item, it's that the record has not been robustly checked against the reality across the red line. Condition 8, as drafted, appears to tie foul drainage compliance to drawings that relate to high street culvert works in Sutton Courtney Village, and not the foul network serving the estate. What are the correct site-specific drainage plans for the development? Even if the intention is the roads today, there are also wider unresolved breaches this application does not deal with. A key example is condition 15, requiring roads and footways to meet Oxfordshire's residential road design guide standard. If that remains in breach, what mechanism will actually secure compliance? In practice, roads and sewers were meant to be adoptable. If they are not adopted, costs risk being shifted to residents and a management company, despite the Section 106 context that the management company was only intended to be able to charge for maintenance of the public open space. Approving this application also increases the risk that the developer will be able to divest remaining interests in the
30
site,
seconds left.
making remediation harder to secure. Please also ask for legal advice on the record whether the previous applications under this application are Section 73 versus Section 73A, with reference to case law, including Wilson Builders. This ties into how the PPG1 opportunity after the event point is being applied with this application, given the refusal history. Please also ask for confirmation regarding the red line scope and what will actually be approved by this application. My primary request is refusal with enforcement to secure remedial work without accidentally regularising unapproved or unverified suds or other elements through a board conditioned plan set. If you are not minded to refuse, please defer for an officer verified approved versus as-built versus proposed control set, site-wide verification and any necessary testing, corrected file drainage information and a secured plan for the remaining breach, including condition 15.
Thank you very much, Mr. Horrocks. So I will now turn to members of the committee and see if anyone has any questions or clarification. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to give you the opportunity. You mentioned you had more information on the Dyna Rod incident mentioned by the previous speaker. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that.
Yes. So again, you will have to say this because this has been relayed to me by another resident. So because of the constant flooding of that area, one of the Sovereign housing tenants made a complaint to Sovereign, who sent Dyna Rod out to try and fix the drain. A CCTV inspection by Dyna Rod showed that essentially the pipe terminates in clay, and that was the reason why it was being blocked. And so far, no remedial works have been performed.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or clarification? Just I sort of asked you to stand. I don't know, but has that answered the bit you wish to add about that matter?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was referring to my property,
Sure.
which is pretty much in the middle of that pooling.
Sure.
And the house is not built 150 millimeter above the surface area. So, I mean, I've not even challenged that. But if this gets approved, indirectly that is also getting approved. And there's a dam rising. I'm reaching out to NHPC. I don't have much hope of it being rectified. So I think houses in this country is a big liability. It's your life's investment. And I think if this sort of subpar work is approved, I think you're not helping the residents.
Thank you very much. I'll just check there are no final questions or clarification. I'll say thank you both very much, and thank you also for your written representations for the meeting. Thank you. I now turn to our final speaker on this application, Councillor Peter Stevens. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you.
Good evening, Councillor Stevens. As with everyone else, you get 3 minutes when you're ready.
Sure, I'm ready. So I've received a bamboozling amount of correspondence on this development right up to today, and I've met with residents, officers, and experts to try to help. Broadly, I'm supportive of the application with conditions attached because I think it is a step forward to resolving some long-standing issues going back many years. No, it won't answer all the grievances, but it will result, I think, in positive action that will improve some of them. However, residents believe that by accepting this application, it's regularising, that's the right word, all the other past wrongs, and therefore limits their ability to rectify a lot of other problems, a double-edged sword. And I'd like some clarity on that. If there is any credence to this, I'd like to understand what is being compromised. If it's not clear tonight, a deferral might be helpful to clarify the facts. However, if there are no compromises, then there's no reason to delay acceptance. I believe the new gullies will improve drainage and prevent flooding and pooling. I wanted the condition that removes the pooling in the parking areas outside 16 to 18. I understand it might be problematic. Residents are sceptical, and I heard them last night, because they believe there's no drainage trench underneath, and because the area is now private parking. However, I feel that the water will flow whether it's private or public, and therefore solutions needed whichever way. I note that the drainage expert believes there is a drainage there, otherwise there would be worse evidence of flooding, and understand a technical problem, if found, which would not stop the condition, but rather enforce the different workable technical solution until it is solved, which should provide reassurance to homeowners. Sorry, someone's trying to ring me. I understand the residents would like a deferral to enforce the applicant to undertake a full as-built survey, which would test and confirm what's been built where and where the shortfalls lay. Any support from the developer, even for parts of this, like for the soakaways and the rest of the drainage, would be positive, as that seems to be in keeping with this application and might add to its efficacy and successfulness. Residents are concerned that their soakaway do not work and that this application regularizes failed or unknown soakaways, and so a condition that does not abrogate responsibility there to accepting this application would be helpful. Mostly residents are worried that by accepting any application, they're losing their rights under the old application to get other remedies enforced. For example, does this application regularise the status quo in a way that might become costly to residents, such as non-adoption of the pumping station on the road? I'm supportive so long as there are reassurance for residents around aspects like this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stevens. I'll just check and see whether there are any questions of clarification of you. I can't see any, so thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
I'll now turn to any questions for our officers, and just a reminder, we have our lead officer, drainage officer and enforcement officer. Maybe give us a thought about who you'd like to direct it to. Councillor Nichols, I think you were first.
So can I go writing with, which I think is the kind of critical question for this one, is my understanding this is a freestanding permission under section 73. Can officers confirm that the wording, in particular condition 7, reflects exactly what we're trying to agree tonight, and it won't unintentionally regularise drainage features beyond the road and public open space?
The condition 7 basically sets out the plans that were approved under condition from the original consent. So when it's a pre-commencement condition that required them to submit details, they were submitted in 2015, and that was carried out in consultation with drainage and with Thames Water. And so those details were approved. So that should be the approved drainage scheme. So we've carried those plans forward. And we've also added the additional details.
So I understand that, and understand what the red line is, and I've walked the site.
Yeah.
My concern is that are we sure what we're really approving here? Because for me, I agree with Councillor Stevens that fixing the pooling on the road and the drainage and the swell that's been put across the open space is probably agreeable things to do. However, does us giving this permission regularize? Sorry, I'm terrible. I've received it before. Or unintentionally, if we let the developer off the hook for all the rest of the drainage issues that have been talked about on this site. So do they somehow apply to the bits, the tarmacking of the driveways, for example?
Well, the driveways aren't included in this application because they're obviously all privately owned now by the homeowners. So that should have come up in their conveyancing when they bought the properties. So this application only seeks to regularise the tarmac in the general areas, and also in the off-plot parking for these properties, particularly where it's at a low point where the flooding and pooling occurs.
Further questions? Councillor DeVille.
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally we had a sort of a gold standard plan, delivered something that was subpar, and now we are trying, or the developer is trying to put the minimum amount of effort into fixing it as possible. And I genuinely don't like it. Is there any benefit to us delaying the decision in the officer's opinion to have a full review, a full survey done of as is versus what was planned?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we have to just determine the application that's in front of us that's proposing to resolve the issues that have been identified through the remedial measures that have been shown. It doesn't propose to dig the whole road up and start and assess what's been.
I understand that, but
again.
We're dealing with a massive number of issues, and like everyone, we don't want to sort of leave anything hanging over, especially with some of the residents who have occupied and are now responsible for like the parking spaces. This feels deeply unsatisfactory, and I think we can all agree to that at least. The question is, if we approve what we have at the moment, are there any other remedial works that are in the pipeline with any other planning applications? Can we look at the whole site as a whole rather than trying to do bits and bobs, just enough to do the absolute minimum?
So we've got the new condition 23, which has been recommended by the drainage officer, which asks for within 3 months of completion of all the remedial works required under conditions 7 and 22 for a SUDS compliance report, and that sets out exactly the details of what we would like to see in terms of evidence that the gullies have been connected, evidence the link drain has been constructed, and evidence that the central infiltration trench within Road 1 has been installed. So this application does give us the opportunity to add new conditions which require those investigations to take place. But there are a number of issues across the site which have been investigated by the enforcement team. So some matters, for example, handing of houses, position of windows, have been dealt with by non-material amendments. But some other matters, as I say, have been decided to be not expedient to enforce. For example, the path that leads to Asquith Place at the north of the site, where there wasn't an adjoining path the other side in the adjacent development, and some. So there are a number of issues on the site which potentially fall under other legislation, for example.
Okay, and just to follow up, you mentioned some other surveys that were happening. And it's all very well saying, right, we dug a gully or whatever. But if the, as we found with Dynarod exploration, if it's not draining into what we expect it to be draining into, is our survey going to pick that up, or is it just going to say there's a gully?
That might be for Will. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear a bit more about the technical
Yeah,
details.
no, that's
possible.
That's
so,
right. I mean, that's kind of why we have asked for this condition 23 to be added to it, so that whilst they are installing these gullies, they will be having to excavate the road. That is the opportunity then for the developer to document and provide all the information that the subsurface road construction has been carried out with what was initially approved.
Okay. And what's the criteria? Because I think you mentioned that there was a certain amount of rainfall per hour. So if we suddenly find that the soil, whatever type of soil it is not going to accept that much water, what opportunities do we have to remedy that?
Well, kind of that aspect of the design isn't changing from what's already been approved. So they have consent for that in place. What I would say is the reason the trench is there is because within the site there's a band of sand and gravels, and that's what the trench has to extend into in order for the dispersal. The upper layers are clayey, but once you get past that, you're into sand and gravel, which you infiltrate as well. So the idea of the trench is to dig down and target that layer. That's what we need to confirm, that it has been constructed to that depth. If it hasn't, then yeah, that would be a further enforcement works, but that's what condition 23 will allow us to enforce against.
Any further questions? Councillor Pickups.
I know we've already talked about this, but I think condition 23 is weak.
Okay.
Because we can come on to this in the debate about where this goes, but if the SUTS compliance report identifies remedial work or deficiencies, it'll need a further scheme of remedial works be submitted and agreed. And I think we should be specifying that directly, because otherwise I think it's quite a weak condition.
So I guess in terms of request, sorry, if you want to come in.
Yeah, I think there's a point at which, if that we found things that weren't acceptable, weren't as we expected through that, that may be then required to be a review of the drainage scheme, and it may be a different approach is then needed. That potentially would be a fresh application, as opposed to, because we don't know the extent until we've controlled those. We're controlling those elements of when they start to dig down and put the gullies in. If something is significantly not as we anticipate, then we would need to understand what implications that is, and whether that would trigger a new application, or whether there's some tweaks in discussion with the drainage officer that can be made to make that acceptable.
So, I mean, I have a question on this. So, although I understand that it's tricky to deal in these hypotheticals, at the same time, is there a way we can tighten the condition to suggest, for example, that were that to be the case, that a residual scheme for drainage needed to come forward within a certain period of time? Because clearly, if we're minded to approve this, we want to minimise disruption for residents as much as possible. So I would be potentially looking, if we felt it was reasonable, enforceable, and all of the other 6 tests, to say that we should include something that says that something must come forward within a period of time. And I would like to get some advice from our drainage engineer, what would be a reasonable amount of time were things to be discovered that we were unexpecting. So what would be a reasonable amount of time if we were to condition that?
For them to kind of come up with new design ideas, I would say you'd kind of want 6 months until you reach construction.
Thank you. I'll take some further questions now. Councillor Go.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, actually, I really worry about this proposed schema, because again, kind of, just the chances of success quite questionable. Here again, just regarding legalities, just again, if it's not going to work and just mitigate, just the current situation, if it's still going to be flooding, how legally, outside of enforcement, can we make them to make new application? Will developers still be liable for making changes and just coming to the point when just flooding addressed on the site? So just how does it play in terms of just implementing solution, and then just have legalities just to keep them obliged and liable to do that on the site.
Is this possibly one for Emma Turner as our enforcement officer? So maybe Emma, I don't know if you could, if you got all that, but it would be good to get a sense of what sort of enforcement measures there are if the drainage scheme is not as we find it, as not as we expect. You're muted.
Apologies. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. Yes, so at the moment we're still in time to take enforcement action under the current application, and that's still in time until July 2026. However, if a decision is made this evening and permission is granted, then we have another whole 10 years to ensure that a scheme is enforceable on this site.
Thank you. So just for my clarity, any other enforcement matters on this site will fall foul of the 10-year rule if there isn't a further application on this site which is approved. Or comes. Is that right?
Our
So I
last,
wanted to be sure.
our last date at the moment, we're still within the 10 years up
Right.
to the 12th of July 2026. So things are still enforceable under the current scheme as of today until July. And then if permission is granted this evening by committee, then a whole new 10 years starts from when the permission is it's published along with any 106 agreement
Thank you.
variation.
Has anyone got any other questions on generally or on enforcement specifically? I just wondered. But Councillor Wilson, we'll go to you first.
A minor one on the enforcement again. So, for clarity, if there's a condition, obviously several of the conditions have been left blank to keep the numbering the same. If there was an enforcement issue around one of the conditions of the old application that's just been left blank on this one, that falls out in July. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
And if it's reimposed, but this is a whole new permission. So section 73A, the Town and Country Planning Act, grants a whole new permission. So anything that's conditioned on the new permission is then enforceable for 10 years from the date of permission.
But where it's been left intentionally blank in this one, essentially it's treated as not existing. But it's the old one.
If it's not reimposed on the new, if it's not reimposed, correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Go.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if it's a question to Emma. I wanted to clarify actually who will produce this compliance report.
Apologies, it wasn't very clear for me.
Yeah, so the condition is a compliance report. I'm just wondering who will produce this compliance report.
Sorry, which compliance report?
So it's probably one for Will anyway. So Will, could you respond to that?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that would, we've worded it so it needs to be prepared by an appropriately qualified engineer. So the developer,
engineer,
not they or no,
independent
the
engineer.
independent.
Thank you.
Councillor Devine.
Yeah, this might be compliance, this might be something else, but what would the criteria be for the compliance? Would it be the structure, you build this gully, or would it be the actual performance of drainage?
It would be it would need to confirm that the construction of the drainage has been carried out in accordance with the detail that was submitted. So the detail that's submitted relates to the performance.
Yeah, but the point is that the criteria would be you build this in this way, and if you do that, then in theory we get the performance.
Yes.
And I think the concern we have is that we've built certain things, they haven't necessarily been quite in accordance with what was originally planned, and therefore the performance has suffered. But really the key thing here is the performance that we want to make sure is absolutely nailed down.
So in terms of what's been constructed and what's now being proposed,
the
only new element of it is the gully. What's been constructed has already been approved with supporting evidence at that time. So we can't ask for additional supporting evidence now.
Okay.
But with condition 23, there is an opportunity to check that what is there is already is working, just so I'm clear on this. So it's not that we can impose extra things on it, but if it's not working, say the infiltration trench isn't there or doesn't work properly, the condition does allow us to then say, well, the drainage isn't working properly, right? Is that correct? So we can't impose extra things, but we can check that what's there is actually there.
Yes.
Okay, right. I think I've got that, but I don't know, Councillor Devine, do you want to come back on this?
It sounded like you were saying that the construction as built performs to the expected standard. Is that correct?
Well, yes. Yeah. And we can check that through condition 23.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So I was getting a bit confused as well. So okay, understood. So anyway, sorry, I'll bring in any other questions for our officers. Councillor James.
Right. Can I ask a question about condition 15, which one of our speakers quickly mentioned, so that is left blank on this one, and I believe that is the one about requiring that the roads are adopted. Is that not sort of related to the fact that this is making a change to the roads? I'm wondering why we've left that blank now, because that seems, from the point of view of the residents, anything that is preventing parts of the estate being adopted that they were expecting to be adopted is a significant burden on them going forward.
So it's understood that the roads won't be adopted,
Right.
but the applicant will be submitting a private streets agreement to the county council. But they need a valid planning permission in order to attach that to. As part of the private streets agreement, it's understood that OCC will go out and assess the roads and the pavements, and they will check whether they have been built to an adoptable standard. Presumably, if it's not built to an adoptable standard or they're not satisfied with the dimensions, they wouldn't approve the private streets agreement. But that's as far as I understand it. And the private streets agreement would then cover the roads and the pavements.
But what is a private streets agreement? And how does that help the residents?
I think it's just a certificate and an assurance from the county council that they're satisfied that the roads and the pavements have been built to an adoptable standard. If they aren't, I think the developer probably has to address that in order to get that, because you need to have a private streets agreement or the roads adopted, one or the other. And at the moment, we have neither.
Okay, but the original intention seems to have been that they would actually be adopted.
I'm not sure that was the case. And so we've dealt with two different house builders here as well, with Linden Homes originally being involved and now Vistry. So
Adoptable standard doesn't necessarily mean adopted.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the key point there. It's kind of it's the level that it's constructed to, whereas to get it adopted, there's lots of other legal agreements that are required. So a lot of developers choose not to enter them, and that's something we can't control within the planning system. It's within the developer's right whether they choose to have assets remain private or transfer them onto an adoption authority.
Okay. And do yeah, okay. I was just my understanding from the presentation we've heard from residents in particular that the expectation was that the roads would be adopted. So is that something that has to be pursued through a different route?
Emma, would you like to? Sorry, I missed your hand. Emma, please come in.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Yeah, just to say, my understanding is from the beginning that I think this is a misunderstanding. The approved drawings and the drawings submitted throughout the planning applications throughout the time of this development have always stated adoptable standard or adoptable. The word adoptable is on the approved plans. Now, whether that's been misinterpreted by some people that the roads would be adopted, I think that that's where things have fallen down. My understanding is that during the conveyancing process, when the residents purchased their properties, that should have been made aware at the time of purchase as to whether there's a failure there within the conveyancing situation. But there is nothing at all within with no section 38. It's a section 38 agreement that's normally entered into with the highway authority, and the developer would normally transfer all that documentation through and for purchasers, so allowing solicitors to be able to have a look at the full package of measures going forward. So my understanding is at no point there's a section 278 agreement that was entered into for the Bellmouth at the beginning of the development, but we haven't ever seen any evidence of a section 38 agreement being applied for or entered into.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a question on landscaping for a second. So I just wondered, Amanda, could you so we saw the central part of the site when we went down, and it's understood that with this application there will be some trees that are going to be put in with a sort of 5-year condition to ensure that they don't die and they're in good health. And you mentioned earlier on as a wildflower meadow. So is that the section where the wildflower meadow is going to be?
Yes.
And which other parts are covered by the landscaping agreement? Because we went to the back of the site. Are there due to be trees up there as well?
There were proposed to be trees along the back of the site, yeah. So here, I mean, I'll just give you the pictures so you can see the images.
Yeah.
This is the central, the public open space.
Thank you.
And then towards the back of the site.
So is that
That bit there. Yeah, there's some additional planting. It was taken right from the northeast corner, northwest corner, looking east. So there was some additional tree planting along this rear boundary, and then as we go further along, if I can get the right picture. There we go, where the pumping station is. There was meant to be some additional planting down here, and also some wildflower and some bulb planting.
And was that not done, or was it done and it failed?
I'm not quite sure whether it's been done. And the bulb planting, I think we probably.
Okay, but in terms of the trees, there should be
there should be some trees. There is one tree there I can see.
Okay.
Whether or not they've all been put in, or whether they've been put in and they've failed.
Okay.
I'm uncertain. But
with this application, there will be a landscaping scheme, which is on that it looks like there's quite a large number of trees on that plan. Right? It looks like there's supposed to be quite a large number of trees.
Yeah.
And when we went down, again, I don't know what those are supposed to be, but it didn't seem like they were there.
They were there, no.
So this landscaping scheme does include those, and there'll be a plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's difficult to tell here because it's not coming up very big at all. But you can just about see some areas that sort of marked out on the public open space, and they are sort of wildflower planting areas, different grass seed mixes.
Understood. And there are no trees currently on the main.
There aren't any at the moment, and there were proposed to be. I think there's a magnolia. I don't know. My mouse needs to sit still. About there, I think there's meant to be a magnolia tree.
Okay. Great. I'll bring Emma in as well because her hand is up. So Emma.
Hello. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, we from the enforcement perspective, obviously, knowing that there were other elements that need to be looked at, the drainage being our main concern, then it was felt it wasn't actually the right timing to pursue any ongoing landscaping issues until everything was resolved. And this is why another reason why the landscaping has been included in this application, to make sure we can beef that up and actually get a nice scheme to make the environment much better, and as should have been expected by residents from the beginning. So the whole idea was to try and be comprehensive now with the public realm, to include sort of a much nicer open space area, and also to put enhancements in further at the rear of the site.
Are there any further questions for our officers before we move into debate? So I'm going to suggest we move into debate. I'll try not to call on officers again. It might be that we have a sudden question, but I will try and move us into debate. And to do so, I need a motion. So would someone like to put forward a motion on this application? I mean, if no motions are forthcoming, it's my role as chair to put forward a motion to approve the recommendation, which will be seconded by Councillor Shaw as vice chair. So we will have a motion to approve the officer's recommendation. I just want to take advice, though. If I want to put forward this motion with slight tweaks to condition 23, and indeed potentially to the landscaping condition 4, is it my right to do so, or should they come out of debate?
It's fine. If you want to continue with the debate, then we can summarise up to
Fine, that's fine. Well, let's continue with the debate. So we have a motion to approve the application. I open the floor to debate. Councillor Ludo.
Thank you, Chair. So it feels like not just we have two choices, both of them are bad. So kind of, we can defer, just do nothing, or we can try or we can approve it, and then, just start doing something, at least trying to do something to improve the situation. Again, there is no good choice here, but I would prefer to start doing something, or just versus doing nothing at all.
Any further points on debate?
Councillor. Yeah. So whilst I recognise the intention to kind of move the site towards a solution, I'm concerned that the kind of permission before us, I just made some notes about this, that it regularise the wider drainage solution for the entire site. And I've listened to what the officer said about this concerns the road and the square across the public space. But to be fair, I've read all the documentation and also all the very helpful emails from the residents. And I have to say that I'm not certain that I'm fully in agreement that the scope is limited just to the road and just to the swale across the open space. And I don't feel I've got sufficient clarity on the as-built position or future performance safeguards to actually support approval at this stage. I think that, as I've already mentioned, I think I'm unhappy that condition 23, and I have listened to what Emily said, but it just sounds like we leave it hanging for us to do stuff afterwards. And I'm not certain that's a good condition where basically if they find a problem, the condition doesn't actually say what happens next. That's why I think a remedial works kind of plan needs to be submitted and approved if it's found to have gaps, for example. And also condition 7. I know this sounds like a bit of micromanagement on my part, but something there you said for the avoidance of doubt, this condition applies only to the road and public open space drainage infrastructure shown on the approved plans, which I think kind of gets around the problem that the officer mentioned, and that would take away that scope issue for me. But I don't think I can support this application unless those two issues are addressed. And actually, if I asked people in the committee to put their hands up, if they really, really understood the scope issue, and we're absolutely certain, I'm not sure how many people would actually put their hands up.
Well, as the mover of the motion, I would be very inclined to take amendments to both condition 7 and condition 23 that would reflect that. So let's discuss the debate a bit further, and then we'll see if we sum up. Oh, yes. Any further points on this? Please, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. I find myself agreeing quite strongly with Councillor Piggles. The actual sort of technical solution to the road drainage issue seems to have been addressed, and particularly if we strengthen condition 23, such that in the hopefully unlikely event that it doesn't work, then we can actually do something about it. Then I'd be quite satisfied with that. The bigger issue to me is the scope question. So if we can nail that down, then I think I'd be happy to support the motion.
Any further points on this? I might, given what's been said, I might bring in officers just to comment on ways of refining those conditions to meet the concerns raised by Councillor Piggles, Councillor Watson, and indeed by myself.
Yeah, so if we can start with condition 4, if you could just outline what the aim you would like the aim of that to be.
I think with condition 4 on the landscaping matters, we haven't discussed this. My concern on that would be that often with these conditions, it's for a 5-year period and the trees fail within that 5-year period. I think given that we haven't seen what was supposed to be there either planted or succeeding, I would be inclined to suggest that on this side, we should be looking at a 10-year period to ensure the trees do not fail and their blossoms are gone. So I would be happier if there was a time limit of 10 years. My understanding is it's normally 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the wording now.
It is 5.
Yeah. So I would like that to be 10 years.
Okay, yeah.
On 7, in terms of the scope, I think it's been fairly clear, which is that we want to, clarify the extent to which areas are covered here. But I want to make sure I'm getting that right.
So I did make whilst we were talking, I made the note. If and obviously you'll turn this into planning ease, but it's something along the lines of, for the avoidance of doubt, this condition applies only to the road and public open space drainage infrastructure shown on the approved plans, which I think is exactly what Amanda said. I just turned it into a avoidance of doubt.
Yes, yeah.
That would lock.
I'll bring in Councillor Gover on this one, please.
Thank you, Chair. Emily, can we include the timeline, just in the conditions, just they should start within this period of time, and then, just again, we check if it works, someone produce this compliance report within this period of time, just again, if you have issues, I'd like us to pick it up quickly,
So I think that's on condition 23, wouldn't that be? So I think I tend to agree with you and condition 21, but I think that probably will fall in another condition, but I tend to agree that would be a useful thing to have. So just
sorry, just
please.
going back, sorry, Councillor Peakles, could you just repeat again what you just outlined? Sorry.
For the avoidance of doubt,
Yeah.
this condition applies only to the road and public open space drainage infrastructure shown on the approved plans.
Thank you.
I probably haven't got the terminology right about the approved plans, but it's good in the red lined area, isn't it?
Thank you.
Then on condition 23,
Yeah.
what I noted would be would the condition be amended so that it says that if the SUDS compliance report identifies deficiencies, a further scheme of remedial works must be submitted and approved.
Yes, and just checking, we felt a 6-month period was reasonable for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay.
I think not to be constructed, but to have a solution
Yes,
designed
yes.
within 6
Yeah.
months.
Councillor Gover, does that address the
Yes.
the concern that you had?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So we've amended, we have a motion to approve with the amendments of conditions 4, 7 and 23. I will just ask officers quickly whether any of those changes means that we need to look at any of the other conditions. I don't believe so, but I want to just check.
Condition 33 ties into conditions 7 and 22, so that's the changes to 7, I don't think.
Okay. Right, so we have an amended motion on the table to approve with those 3 amended conditions, and I think that at least the sentiment behind them is clear. If the exact wording might get slightly tighter, just in case, but I think the sentiment has been recorded. Does anyone want to say anything further on this motion now? If not, I'm going to suggest we move to a vote. Right, okay, we have a motion to approve with those 3 amended conditions. So all those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. And I'd just like to thank all our speakers and all our officers for their on that application. Right, I'm going to suggest we move on to our next item, which is 8 locations around the village of Stanford. And Rachel, I believe you're presenting on this one. Yes. So we'll just take 2 minutes so people can leave and move away. Please. Okay, well, thank you very much. Rachel, I believe you're presenting on this one, so please, when you're ready, take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, we've received an additional representation from a neighbour since the committee report was published, just raising concerns regarding drainage in relation to the placement of one of the stones. Which is acknowledged, and officers are satisfied that we've made with their concerns based on the information we did. This application is referred to Planning Committee, and Vale of White Horse District Council is the freeholder. some of the land on which the application relates, and some objections have been received. Okay. The proposal is to install public art in the form of 8 wayfinder stones with site-specific mosaic designs around the village of Stamford in the Vale. The application site for the 8 locations is shown on the location plan on this slide. 5 of the stones are within the Stamford in the Vale conservation area, and 4 of them are also within the setting of a listed building. The map on the right shows the conservation area outlined in green, with the listed buildings shown in orange. The 8 stones are part of a wider project of 19 stones across the village, which are intended to reflect the village's heritage, contemporary identity and community. The proposal has been designed by an artist with input from local community groups. I'll just run through each of the stones location plans with their planned mosaic. Number 3 is within the conservation area and within the setting of a listed building. Stone 7 is within the conservation area. Stone 8 is within the conservation area and the setting of a listed building. Same for stone 9 and stone 10. And 15, they've given us 2 different designs that they might go with. And that's the last one. That's just some examples of some of the stones that might be used. I think they gave us a set of 21 to pick from. And here's some site photos of each location that the stones will be at. 7 and 8, 9 and 10, and 15 and 16. As outlined in the report, the principle of providing public art in the village is supported. Officers consider that the scale, design and positioning of the proposed stones would preserve the special historic character and appearance of the conservation area and setting of listed buildings. Further, the proposed development would not materially harm residential amenity or highway safety. Officers are therefore recommending planning permission be granted subject to motion.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. We might return to you for some questions. We actually don't have any speakers per se on this application, I understand, but we do have Councillor Bob Kent and Kevin Middleton here to answer any questions, but you are registered speakers, so if you would like to have some time to speak, you are welcome to it.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, we understand the convention is that since the officer is recommending approval, that we wouldn't normally speak in this circumstance, so we don't have anything prepared, but we are here to take planning committee's questions basically in the slot that we have.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I will ask committee if there are any questions that anyone on the committee has for either of you. Councillor Gover.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask you just who will produce those stones, like local artists? You know, just who will do that?
The stones within the parish of Stamford in the Vale, we've got 3 quarries, and one of the quarries is very kindly offered to donate the stones free of charge. So it's local stone, and we worked very closely with the art development officer at the Vale of Whitehorse in going through a selection process to find an artist who would be sympathetic in their style for the stones. Basically, what's happening, there'll be a mosaic inlaid into each of the stones, which will be depicting an area or a point of interest within the village, and there'll also be a QR code in the stone, which you can put your phone on, and it'll give you a bit of history about where you're standing in the village, what you can see from where you're standing, and all of that good stuff. And really the purpose of the project was to really try and bring the village together. Over the last 25, 26 years, the population of the village is more than doubled. And we've got 4 new housing estates in the last 25 years. And the village started to feel a bit fractured. So the idea behind the Wayfinder Trail is it's about a 2 or 3 kilometre walk really around the complete village. and to the extent where the local primary school have been involved in designing some of the mosaics. And it's also going to be coming onto the curriculum at the local school for the first year intake, where they focus very heavily on the history of Stamford in the Vale. So the Wayfinder Trail is it's to bring the village together. It's been supported by the school and the local history society, and we all feel it's a project well worthwhile.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kent. Are there any further questions? I can't see any, so I'll say thank you very much for joining us and answering our questions this evening. There are no further speakers on this, so I now open up the floor to questions for our officer. Has anyone got any questions for Rachel? I can't see any, so thank you very much for a very comprehensive report. Oh, Councillor Dover, where we have one.
Yes, just wanted to confirm that just the cost fully covered by section 106.
Yes, so it's section 106 funds that are allocated to public health.
Very good. Okay, so on that note, I suggest we move into Councillor Pickles.
No, I was going to say.
Let's propose a motion, right? Yes, I need a motion. So
I was thinking it's a brilliant idea.
Okay. So I have a proposal that we accept the officer's recommendation, and I assume I have a seconder there with Councillor Bully.
I lived there for a couple of years, and I completely get what he said about it feeling quite fractured as a community, and I think it's a great idea.
Great. Anyone got anything further to say on this application? Councillor Gogan.
Just wanted to wish you good luck with the presentation and wish you to find, just good artists or artists, who could implement it. I'm so happy to hear the school participated in design. Yeah, so great.
I remind Councillor Gogan for this portion of the debate, but I should really ask our speakers to be off camera at this stage. So thank you for joining us. I'm afraid I have to ask you at this moment to go off camera and remind everyone that we are now debating a motion and we should debate it amongst ourselves, but I will allow that as please, Councillor Rayner.
I just think it's a brilliant idea. I know in my village and any village that has been built and built and built, it's really important to have something that grounds people to the origins of the village. I think it's a brilliant idea.
Great. Anything further? In which I'm saying, should we take a vote on this application to approve? So all those in favour? Unanimous. Not a big shock. Excellent. Very good. Well, thank you very much for that. So that is approved. I now turn to the final item on the agenda this evening, which is for us to note the appeals data. Can I say so noted? Yes, yes. So noted. Okay, very good. And all that leaves me to do is to close the meeting and just say thank you very much to all our speakers, thank you to all our officers, and thank you to you committee, especially those who subbed into the meeting. Thank you very much for attendance. And with that, I close the meeting. And Susie, can you confirm the live stream has ended?